Stampers, this is Karen Summy with Karen's Blue Ridge Stamping. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know, sometimes I need to get organized. As much as I love lists and as much as I like to have a plan for what I'm going to do next, sometimes I just get disorganized. I have tons of these little notepads that I carry around my house, and the problem is I have so many of those notebooks that sometimes I'm scrambling to figure out which one of those notebooks has the notes I need. So what I really need to do is get organized into a single notebook so that I can find what I need when I need it. So today I'm going to be talking about spiral bound notebooks. Spiral bound notebooks. This is one that I purchased at my local office supply store, and it is a 9.5 by 6 inch finished size. I want it a little bit smaller than 8.5 by 11 because I'm going to be using 12 by 12 designer series paper, and I need the notebook to be just a little bit smaller so that I can make it work for me in my design. So this is 9.5 by 6. It is college ruled. It has plenty of space to write what I need to write in it. Let me show you a finished notebook that I made. You may recognize the Europeach designer series paper found on page 134 of the 2021-2022 annual Stampin' Up! Catalog. And that's the paper I use to make my custom organizer. You'll see in a moment that this has tabs, and it is made just for me so that I can be organized. When I do this, I make sure that the spirals are all taken care of. Then I have my own tabs. I have a tab for a to-do list, and in that tab I have a custom pocket that I've added to this tab. I have a second tab for planning ahead, another bit of designer series paper, another kind of custom made pocket. I even have one on the back side of this tab. And then finally in the back, I want to capture where I have made some design decisions for myself. I have another pocket, and this contains a little 6-inch ruler that I can use. And then finally at the end in the back cover, I have included a custom annual calendar for 2022. So stay with me, join me at the craft table to see how I made this custom organizer for myself in my craft room from a simple spiral bound notebook. Okay, as you can see, I have my store-bought spiral notebook here, and I mentioned earlier that this is a 9.5 by 6 inch notebook, and I want to point out that while it says 5.5 on the front cover of this notebook, they are measuring only the amount of paper that is from the perforation to the right edge. For our purposes, we're also going to be using this spiral bound part, and that's another 1/2 inch, so it is in fact 9.5 by 6 inches. Okay, there are several tabs that I'm going to put in the notebook, as well as front and back covers. I'm going to demonstrate part of that, and part of that I have prepared for you already. You will know at the end of the video how to do this exactly, so I haven't left you in the dark about anything, but for the purposes of time, I am using some pre-prepared items as well so that we can keep moving forward. So the first thing that I have is the front cover. Now, when I make these spirals, I use something very specific. So there's one piece of equipment that I recommend for you to have. There are probably some options for this. So first of all, I have a crocodile. And this is one that I've had for years and years. I still find it very useful, and it has lots of interesting sections to it. But the thing that I'm using for this particular spiral bound notebook is the 3/16 inch hole puncher. And the 3/16 is exactly the size of the paper spirals in this notebook. That will vary by notebook, so I actually measured what I had when I started working with this particular notebook. To do that, I tore one sheet out of the notebook itself, and then I looked for the measurement that would fit one of those holes just exactly. And while I'm a little unsteady, I hope you can see that that is the same size of hole. So it's 3/16 of an inch. All right, so if you don't happen to have a crocodile, you might be able to find a hole punch like you can buy at the office supply store that has a 3/16 inch puncher for you, but you will need something that's pretty close to the size of the notebook to get it to work. So I am using the crocodile itself, and you may, choose between this and a 3/16 inch punch or whatever fits the notebook that you have bought. If you happen to do an 8.5 by 11, you probably have a standard size hole punch, but then you have a bit of an issue with the designer series paper in making that work for you unless you have very narrow margins on either end. It is conceivable you could do that with a 1/2 inch margin around. If you choose to do that, that's fine as well. All right, so moving on. I'm going to show you how I construct all this in a few moments. But right now, I'm going to jump to the middle of the book, and I'm going to take you into the tabs that I'm going to put in the book because I have not completed them. Now, what I found is for the crocodile, it is quite sturdy, and so it can handle more than one sheet of paper at a time. I have cut a pocket and the spirals that go in the pocket, and they're going to go right on this yellow sheet of paper here. And I'm also going to cut this green one at the same time. On the back side of this green one, I have already placed another style of pocket like I showed you earlier in my sample. And I'm going to try to cut all of this at once. And to do that, first of all, I need to mark where I want my holes to go so that I can cut them out appropriately. Now for this section, I've already got holes here, and I can just follow those holes for the rest of the page. In order to make all this work as it should, I am going to use some Post-it labeling and cover-up tape. This is very low-tack tape like you would find in Post-it notes. And I'm simply going to tape these sheets together to keep them steady so that they don't move while I'm trying to measure and cut my hole punches. All right, so I have that together. I'm not worried about that now. And at this point, I can go ahead and mark the rest of the holes that go in this. To do that, I'm laying down this one sheet of paper that I took out of my notebook. I'm going corner to corner, and you can see my paper size is exactly the same as the notebook itself. And I'm going to start up here where I do not have, and you'll probably see that that looks a little bit off under there. These notebooks are a bit forgiving, and so if you're just a little bit off with your hole punching, you'll be okay. But this is the way I mark the holes for punching. And I'm not going all the way around the circle simply because the bottom of this, or the edge of the paper, has some tears in it where I tore it out of the spiral binding. And so I don't really want to get onto that. It will give me less than an exact measurement. And so I am just doing kind of little semicircles on top of this. All right, then I am ready to start punching holes. And I'm making very sure that I have my 3/16 inch. Don't know that you can really see that. You might see it there, 3/16 of an inch. And this is a little bit of a guide for you where you are putting the paper down in this little slot. And this is on the 4th mark, which is going to mean when I place the paper in here, it puts it exactly from top to bottom where I want it. So with that, I'm going to start my punches. Now, as I said, this is very sturdy, and it goes through all of these sheets of paper. That's about 4 layers that I'm going through. And when I punch, I have to have this hole cleared every time so that I can see where the next punch belongs. In order to do that, I usually just compress the crocodile and flip it over so that it will kick that paper trash out of there so that I can see the next punch. So my hands get a little bit tired doing all of this hole punching, and if yours are a little bit on the less sturdy side and I have something stuck in there, what I'll sometimes do if I get a little bit of paper stuck is take my Take Your Pick tool and I'll just bump it out with that. It works beautifully. But most of the time I can get it out quite easily without doing that. And I'm not going to worry about all that trash until I finish. And you get the idea about punching these holes. I'll show you a couple more that are up here on the yellow itself and where I've marked them to give you a little bit better visual away from that designer series paper. And again, this is a little bit forgiving, so if you happen to get a little off of your marked area, that's okay. For now, I'm going to speed the video up so that you don't need to watch me punch holes for the next few minutes. And I will be back with you as soon as I'm finished. Okay, I finished all the punching for these, and now I can simply remove this Post-it tape to separate all of this again. And in one pass, I've done 4 sheets of paper with 2 tabs, so pretty easy to get through that. All right, that's the way I measure and punch my holes. Now you will notice that on this one is where I marked with the pencil, and so I'm going to go back and just use an art eraser and just give it a very gentle scrub across the top to get rid of those pencil marks, and then that is all cleaned up. All right, at this point I am ready to start applying some of these things to the notebook. And I will bring it back and start with the front cover, which is this. And this is so very easy. You're going to love the simplicity of this. There is one step that I need to cover for you before I move on. I'm going to do these one at a time because they don't take that long. So right now we have these closed holes. So how do we get them over these spirals? Very simply, I am going to use my snips and I'm going to turn this paper on a diagonal. Sorry, I'm trying to get it in frame for you there. I'm going to turn it on a diagonal and I'm going to snip right through each of these holes, and that goes pretty quickly. And I'm trying to stay on relatively the same angle all the way down. And roughly the same place in each circle. So I have already done that with this sheet. This is the cover. So all of these are already cut. And at this point, I am going to start with the first spiral and the first hole. And I am simply going to push this paper into these holes all the way down. Now, if you prefer, you can use your bone folder or something else to push those down. I just chose to use my finger at this point. And these are all now attached to the spiral notebook. Now, I'm not going to leave it there. So what happens next is that I use some glue. And I'm using the green glue. If you happen to have the fine tip glue pen from Stampin' Up, that'll work quite well as well. But I really don't need that per se. If you don't have it, just the regular green glue will work just fine. And you are literally dotting glue on this notebook cover, just right between those spirals at the edge of the paper. You don't want too much because it will seep out from under and make a bit of a mess, but if you just use it sparingly, it is going to be absolutely enough and just fine to just have those little dots of glue along here. If you want to go just a little bit inside or between the hole punches, you can do that as well, because it's all going to be glued down to the surface, so it really doesn't matter. All right, I have the glue on there. I'm simply going to flip it back over there, make sure that my papers are aligned all the way down the edge. And then I'm just going to press, and I think I will use the bone folder for this segment. give that a little burnish so it will have good contact. So those cuts that you just made, or that I just made, to get that around those spirals are now glued down. They're in place, and they are going to look very natural, just like they came that way. All right, now we have, the glue is drying, and I'm going to flip this to the back side, and I'm going to start working with the inside of that and finishing this inside cover. To do that, I'm just going to flip the paper up, press it down, give it a good crease. I'm going to make some adjustments in a moment because we're around this spiral and that doesn't work very well, so we're going to fix that. And the thickness of the cover of the notebook itself is going to give you a good indicator of where to place your folds. You'll feel the resistance underneath, so you'll know where it should be folded. All right, now there are two adjustments you need to make here. First of all, we're around this spiral binding and we don't want to be. So what I'm going to do is just come in here and make a diagonal cut in this direction, kind of end it where the cover starts, and now it lays down perfectly. We're going to cover that up so you don't have to be exact, and it'll look just fine. All right, I'm going to do the other side. Give this a little snip over to the corner. And that is now around those spirals as well. On the edge, you don't want all of this bulk to be in here when you do this folding, because that would make it very thick. And the way I get around that is I just take my snips and literally do a wedge. Again, I don't have to be exact because this is going to be covered up. I've seen a mitering tool that helps you do these kinds of things on corners, and I'm going to get myself one of those one of these days. But for now, this is sufficient. You can see that it makes a beautiful corner. It looks quite natural, and then we're just going to, you can tape this down or you can glue it down. I have my glue out, so I'm going to go ahead and glue it. On both ends. Again, I'm being very sparing because I don't want that glue to ooze out of there and make a mess. Even though I am covering it up, I don't want it to ooze right now. So let me do this side. I'm doing just a very thin layer of glue. And that is literally it. My cover, my outside cover is complete. And it looks very nice. Okay, now what do I want to do with this, because it's kind of a mess? All right, the way I'm going to resolve that is to come in with another piece of coordinating designer series paper, and I'm going to glue it right over the top. Now, if I really wanted to get formal with this, I could cut another sheet that fits inside these spirals and it would be perfectly matched up. But honestly, I don't really want to take that much time with it. So I have just cut a piece of paper that will fit down in there, and I'm just going to glue it down. It's entirely up to you whether you want to be that formal and make it fit those spirals. If you do, there's absolutely no reason you can't. You just repeat the process that I showed a minute ago for the tabs, and it will work just beautifully. All right, I'm just kind of spreading some glue around. I'm going to center that where I want it, paying attention top and bottom, trying to get that fairly even. Press it in. And that section is done. Now we're ready for some tabs throughout the notebook. And to do that, I'm starting with one that's already cut with my spirals. I generally count the number of pages to try to make them in about a third. The first one's probably the hardest one to get on. And once you're started, they all just kind of fall in place. Now these tabs are in. They don't get glued in. They will sit there perfectly well. And you're good to go to the next tab. Again, I have a pocket here where you can place anything that you want to, extra papers and so forth and so on. Then I jump back and I'll probably tear that one out. But I'm ready for the next tab set. And I'm going to glue these two together. I'm going to glue along the perforated edge and along the bottom and up the side as well, at least part way up the side. I don't want to glue in here simply because then I won't be able to place anything inside that pocket. All right, I would let this dry if I were you before I place it in, but because what happens is you may get a little bit of glue on the back side and it may be a little sticky. I'm not going to worry too much about that right this minute. I'm going to go ahead and place this tab in the book and use my bone folder to press those into the spirals. And your second sheet is in and you have a nice pocket to use. And then I'm going to jump back here somewhere in the back. Again, I've put something on the back side of this one, but not the front. And I wanted to show you how I make a little pocket on the front. I like these half pockets that are a vertical pocket and you can slide something in the side of them. But I also like to make them just a little bit on an angle. And so what I do is take my paper trimmer and I start up here with this edge right in the cutting channel. I bring this corner over to 1 inch and I absolutely just slice that off of there and it gives me the angle that I want. Then I take this corner and I draw myself a little curve. It doesn't have to be exact. I like to draw it in beforehand. That kind of keeps me on track when I'm making a curve. And there we have it. Now, in the interest of time for today, I am just going to scoot this out a little bit, and that will let you know that if you want to do that, you can do that without a lot of extra time or going to the trouble to do those extra spiral cuts. That still looks very nice. And now I have a pocket on both sides of this one. And I need my holes in this. As you can see, this is pretty simple. It just takes a little time to put the tabs in and get things organized the way that you want them. But it goes together quite nicely then. Wow. But for now, I have that, and I want to move on to the back cover, which, as you can see, is another variation of the paper that we've already had. I do need to cut the holes in this. It doesn't really matter whether you cut going up or going down. You can do either one you want. Since this is a back cover, if I wanted to be consistent with the rest of the notebook, I should have gone down. But it really doesn't matter, and I doubt that anyone's going to check that or be so exacting that they call you to task on going the wrong direction. So this is going in. Same process I've shown before. Again, I'm going to glue this down because it's an outer cover, and everything will be covered and just absolutely fine. All right, more glue. Okay, and as we did before, we're going to finish the back cover just the same way that we did the front. And there you have it. Now the very last thing that we have to do with this notebook is to add some tabs onto the cardstock that we've placed inside for sectioning off the notebook. I've already done the purple and the Highland Heather and the Daffodil Delight. I should really use the names of the cardstock. Now for placement, I have just glued these cut pieces to the cardstock. I started a little bit down from the top of the first tab and just placed that about halfway onto the cardstock, and I glued both pieces on the back because I'm sticking it to the front and the back of the cardstock. Then I used the first tab to kind of give myself a visual of where I wanted to place this as far as coming down the page, and I placed the second one. I've done the same thing for the next tab, and I have just kind of placed it down there, giving myself a visual cue as to how far down to come. And I've placed a little tick mark here on this green cardstock so I know how far down to come with my green tab. And I'm just going to glue this up. I'm just giving that a quick visual. It's about halfway on and halfway off the cardstock. I'm pressing pretty hard to get that to adhere, and that is literally it. Now, when I decide what I want these tabs to say, I'll probably use my Dymo label maker and make myself some labels for my tabs so that I know what each section signifies. But that's it. We have a finished notebook. Thanks so much for staying with me. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you think this is something that will work for you. Please feel free to give me a thumbs up for the video if you would be so kind as to do that. You can find the like button just below the video. Also, I would love it if you wanted to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can hit that red subscribe button down below the video description, and the little notification bell will let you know when I upload new content to my channel. Also, if you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to earn your business. You can find information about how to find me also in that information below the video. Thanks again for joining me. Until next time, may God bless.